When Tearlaments first came out, Instant Fusion very quickly became the strongest spell card in the entirety of Master Duel, so without anyone's surprise, it was inevitably banned on the following ban list. Now the problem with that being is that before Tearlaments had launched, Instant Fusion was the most powerful spell card in a number of other different rogue strategies who now suffer in its absence. Most notably was, at least in my opinion, Branded Predaplant, which is a deck that personally was one of my favourite ways of playing Branded, and it was a real shame because now the deck's best one card starter route has been completely shut down. However, I was recently just browsing through YouTube and I came across a YouTuber called Masked Hero who posted a deck recently, posted some gameplay recently, there was no deck profile, about Predaplant Heroes. And it got me curious. I'm like, okay, Predaplant Heroes, that sounds pretty cool. I started playing around with it. And then I eventually reached the conclusion to think, what if we use this new hero engine as a way of plugging the holes that Instant Fusion has left in our original Branded Predaplant strategy? And that inevitably led us to the creation of this. Now this is a very interesting deck profile, I will say that. I need to do more testing on it to see what exactly is good and bad about it, but to be honest, so far, I'm really impressed. This deck is really solid, and the addition of the hero engine now basically allows you to put yourself in a position where you're even more impactful against the meta than we were. Yes, we've lost one of our best combo routes in the form of Instant Fusion, absolutely, I 100% get it, but what the deck has gained in its absence now through this engine is the ability to very consistently summon out Masked Hero Darklaw. Now, how are you summoning Darklaw on top of everything else? Well, typically a hero lives is going to be special summoning a Shadow Mist. In our early testing, we got like super lucky with this card and we were opening it all the time. But it's not the only way of going into it, it's just the most direct way of going into it. You can, of course, if you just happen to open up any of these cards, you can pretty consistently put a hero on your board, basically without even trying, either just by directly normal summoning your Shadow Mist, if you're just that guy, or more prevalently, using your Fusion Destiny or Keeper of Dragon Magic or your Foolish Burial or your Brand of Fusion, whatever, to put a Malicious or Denier Engrave to then resummon off their own effects to basically then mass change away. So you could also justify running more copies of mass change. Like I said, in my early testing, I've been getting pretty lucky, so maybe upon more testing, I might change that, I might put more copies in, but I haven't needed it so far, so I haven't done it. We're going to be doing a card for card deck profile at the end. I just wanted to very briefly introduce the concept to you. Apart from that, everything else is pretty much identical to our previous Branded Predaplant strategies. Again, shout out to Masked Hero for even giving me the idea, and I will be linking his video in the description, so I'd recommend checking him out if you do have the chance. Yeah, if you're new on the channel, please subscribe. If you haven't before, if you're interested in anything that we do here, be it deck profiles, be it streams, be it whatever, and feel free to like the video if you enjoy, and we'll get into the gameplay. Alrighty, so this replay in particular is mainly going to be showing off how the deck sort of works in general. This always happens, by the way, they always Ash Blossom your Foolish Burial, I love it. I think people are afraid to let Foolish Burial resolve in a metagame that has things like Rhino Heart in it, and totally justifiable, but they always take the bait on the Foolish Burial. That allows us to go in the art, a hero lives without any cost, and we get to save our Call by the Grave for something like a Maxi, so that turn really couldn't have worked out more for us. That was absolutely perfect. So this is going to be more of a demonstration of what sort of you want to be doing or trying to set up to an extent. The board is very versatile, there's not like an end board. Through its very nature, the deck is extremely versatile. We don't even fully utilize Predaplants on this turn, to be honest with you, because the hand we open up with is just that good. We're going to use a Hero Live, special summoning Shadow Mist directly from the deck. Shadow Mist then grabs us Mass Change from the deck, so there you go. We only run the one copy of the OG Mass Change because this can also search for the Mass Change 2, which is a lot more versatile because it doesn't require hero monsters for its activation. But because we have Shadow Mist already, we may as well just grab the one copy of the Mass Change. So Brand of Fusion, we're going to summon out Albion, we're going to send Ramaran and Albaz for it, and this part's pretty important because you want to generate some extra value out of this little combo. Chainlink 1 Albion, Chainlink 2 Ramaran, very important because Ramaran will send the Fusion monster to the graveyard to then banish along with your Albaz to summon out Lubellion. So it's important you have that Fusion monster there. Then Lubellion will drop up a card, fuse back the two cards, including the Fusion monster that you just pitched to bring out your Mirror Jade. Now the reason that's decently important is because a lot of the Predaplant fusion monsters require you to use fusion monsters as material, so the more monsters you have on your board, basically the better. And we're simply going to pass turn here. So this isn't the most intimidating of boards, but what it is a ton of banishment, right? You've got the Dark Law, which is going to be a Floodgate, banish everything, Macrocosmos on legs. We've got Shadow Mist searching for an extra card. We got Mirror Jade's banish. Then we're going to have something like an Albion search as well for the next turn, should we need it. So we're setting ourselves up for a ton of follow-up, as well as having a pretty devastating first turn play, shutting down most of the decks in the meta, even off of just Dark Law alone. And that's the basic premise of the deck. You can of course set up a bunch of other things. You can set up the Predaplant dude, I can't remember his full name, Trifovertum is his name. You can set up Dragostapelia. Just with that particular board, we didn't really need to. If we had one extra card, if we didn't have to discard our Orthoscorpio, we could also have set up a Super Poly. So in that situation, we were sort of choosing between Super Poly or Orthoscorpio, and, you know, we just chose the play that generated more value. But yeah, amazing game. Let's get in the game too. Alright, getting into this next game here. This was one of our earliest replays, so there's actually a mistake in this deck where we didn't have the Darlington Cobra, right? I had forgotten to put the Cobra in. So this game is actually one we're playing without the Cobra, which is, like, as anyone who's played this deck before knows, is one of the most important cards. But we're just going to give it a go. We're going to see what happens. I didn't realize until we put ourselves in a position to summon it that I had forgotten to put it in. We do luckily, though, have a maximum sheesh to chain to the Oracle, but he's got the Ash Blossom. It's not going to be as easy a win as resolving Max C, so he is going to summon out the Mudora. I believe he also discarded a Mudora for it. He does, so he discarded Mudora, going into Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda. Verte Anaconda then is going to be able to pay 2,000 life points to fusion summon using the deck. So they're going to pay their 2 grand, they're going to send Branded Fusion and bring out Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. Pretty powerful card, but by itself it's not too much to worry about, I guess. But the thing is, it's not totally by itself, because he does have his Graveyard Disruption as well. He of course was able to play through a card in our hand, so we're a card down, plus he's got some Graveyard Shufflers going on, and of course the powerful boss monster that is Mirror Jade. So we're just going to have to find a way around it. We're going to start off with a Hero Lives off the top of the deck, bringing out the Shadow Mist, searching our deck for Mass Change card. He is going to go Mirror Jade here. He's going to banish our Shadow Mist. Not really very much we could do about that. We could technically have activated Super Poly, which initially was the plan. I was hoping he just wouldn't chain it right away, and then we would have Super Poly these two away into Dragostapelia to try and go for easy lethal. Didn't happen that way. Our opponent was smart enough to realize. So because we no longer control a hero monster, that's why we grab Mass Change 2, because Mass Change 2 does not depend upon the monster you have in your field being a hero. It can be any dark monster. So that's fine. We're going to go Brand of Fusion now. Now that he's used up his Mirror Jade banish, all we're really trying to do is put ourselves in a position to get to put lethal on board, essentially. We already had Remeron in hand, which wasn't a great look for us here. He is going to use the Mudora. He's going to prevent the activation of our cards and our summoning of Mirror Jade by returning the Albaz back into our deck. So a little bit unfortunate. We do still have the ability to summon out Dragostapelia though, because of the banished Shadow Mist. So Dragostapelia does hit the board, and we get to grab Predaplant Chlamydia here. We're going to put a counter on his Mirror Jade, which initially I thought was going to help, and it does eventually. We're going to normal summon this guy, fuse it with the Biblisp in the hand, bringing out the ambulance dude, I don't know his name. His effect's going to grab the Bullfrog. Now Bullfrog is essentially a polymerization while in the Pendulum Zone. So now we're going to activate Biblisp. Biblisp is going to summon itself to the field because there is a monster in the field that has a Predator counter. Told you it was going to be useful. Now that Biblisp is on the field, we contribute off his Mirror Jade to summon out our Orthoscorpio. This is where we would have gone into the Darlington and Cobra. Darlington and Cobra summoning out grabbing us a fusion spell. But it didn't really matter too much. We've got enough on board for lethal here. 27, 1000, 1200. Now we're able to use Mass Change 2, discarding the Bullfrog to tribute off our Orthoscorpio to summon out the Dark Law. Dark Law for lethal. Easy game. Again, not very much going on. It's not as if our opponent had nothing, but we were able to play through some shufflers. We were able to play through a little bit of banishment and interruption. So you know what? Pretty cool. Alright, now I know what you're thinking. You're looking at my hand, and you're thinking, John, you're just cherry picking your games. You're just looking for the games that have the best possible hands. I don't know what to tell you. all of the replays that you're seeing right now happened within a span of 4 duels. I'm just that guy. We're just constantly opening up with these broken cards. There was one game that I'm not showing because it was just an instant activate max C and then scoop, whatever. But like within the space of 4 games, we're just constantly opening up these cards. That's why I was saying at the beginning, we're probably in the long run going to have to change it up a little bit, to put in maybe some more copies of Mass Change to make more effective usage of Malicious and his ability to recur for easy Mass Change targets. We might have to do that eventually, but today is not that day. So we're just going to continue to play the cards that they're giving us. Our opponent's playing Sky Strikers and they chose to go first because they're stupid, I think. I don't know. But either way, they do have Engage, which is going to grab them the Mega Modules or Multi-Roll, whatever it's called. Multi-Roll then is going to be able to... Basically, it's just going to sit there and kind of look stupid for a little bit. It allows him to reset his spells to the field at the end phase of a turn in which he uses them. He is going to grab the Afterburners as well to give him a lot of follow-up for next turn. I suppose it just falls to us now not to give him another turn, right? That's the only thing we can do. We do have quite a lot of resources for that specific goal here. We're going to go for Foolish Burial because they always Ash Blossom the Foolish Burial. Always, always, always. And they're not wrong for doing so. I get it. You don't want them to send Rhino Heart, but it does free up our Shadow Mist play, grabbing us La Mask Change. He does actually go and negate us though, using the Widow Anchor. Decided to go for the Widow Anchor early. Very, very interesting. I guess he really doesn't want to see Dark Law, which I totally get, because if we banish his Ray, then he loses the game. So he really doesn't want that to happen. We are going to summon out Albion. Albion as Chainlink 1, Remeron Chainlink 2. Remeron's going to pitch a Predaplant to the graveyard, the Fusion Monster, so now Albion the Branded Dragon can banish the Fusion Monster for Lubellion. Lubellion then of course discard 1 to shuffle the 2 back into the deck to bring out Mirror Jade. Easy branded plays. 3 huge monsters on the board. Biblips as well, being able to grab our Chlamydia. Sometimes you want to grab the Bullfrog here, but I think the Bullfrog is more valuable, and whatever monster I grabbed, I was just going to use as discard fodder for Orpho Scorpio. So Chlamydia, this card isn't too useful all of the time, so it's decent discard fodder basically. Dropping this, summoning into Darlington and Cobra from the deck. Darlington and Cobra being able to search for any polymerization or fusion card, including Super Polymerization. Incredible. We're going to activate Super Poly. In my head, I was thinking we can bring out Trifovertum. Trifovertum, I believe, was going to be able to negate the effect of Ray after it special summons out a Link monster from the extra deck. Again, I hate the Wen ruling. The Wen ruling does my goddamn head in. So we're going to bring out Ray, we're going to swing in, Ray is going to activate her effect. I believe we were going to be able to negate this off of Trifovertum, but apparently not. Kagiri then can activate, grabbing the Widow Wanker back, but it doesn't matter. Swinging in, taking out that, and our opponent pretty quickly gives up at that stage. So yeah, I mean, what more do you want? Like, it's absolutely brutal shutdown there. And yeah, that does it for our games. Let's get into the deck profile. Alright, so here is the early sort of prototype, if you will, of the strategy. Like I said, I have been phenomenally lucky with the deck in the early stages of testing. But to be fair, I feel like the only real thing you would want, like if you wanted to subsidize my luck and make it more substantial, all you really would be missing is Mass Change, because the deck has a ton of ways of putting at least one hero on board. You have, of course, a Hero Lives to put out your Shadow Mist. You have Foolish Burial, which will send a Malicious. You have Keeper of Dragon Magic, which even if it doesn't, typically you'll be able to discard a hero if you have one, but even if you don't, it'll search your deck for Fusion Destiny, which you will then be able to use to put a Malicious or Denier on board. So there's what, 3, 2, 1... There's an extra 3 there. I should have been counting as we were going along. What's that? 9 cards that put heroes in your graveyard. There's another 3 here in the form of your Brand of Fusions. There's 12. Plus you've got the 2 copies of Alibur. There's 14. 15 in the form of Foolish Burial. So it's easy. It's you can put heroes in grave, and using all of those methods, all you need to do is put one in grave, and then you can immediately summon it out to the field, and there is your Mass Change target. So if you really wanted to bump Mass Change up, I would be inclined then to try cutting other things down. If you're going to do that, I would maybe cut the Chlamydia. I would maybe cut maybe a copy of Max C, but Max C's really goddamn strong, man. It's really good. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do at that point, but running more copies of Mass Change typically isn't going to be a problem, because like I said, even outside of being able to search for it, it's just a really good card. And you have so many ways of putting a hero on board that it's ridiculous. So you can sort of do whatever you want. I'm just going to show the deck off as I played it, and then you can bear in mind those modifications as you go forward and play with it yourself. So starting off at the top, we have Predaplant Biblisp. This card here, basically when it's sent to the graveyard, you get to grab any Predaplant monster from your deck and add it to your hand, so it's just a good way of generating value. This deck eats up a lot of cards in hand as part of discard fodder. Keeper of Dragon Magic needs to discard, Lubellion and your Brand of Fusion needs to discard, Albaz needs to discard, which you're never really going to do very often. Orpho Scorpio needs to specifically send a monster, which is where this comes in, making sure you have a monster in hand. So there's a lot of discarding in hand, and of course any fusion based strategy is entirely dependent upon its ability to generate advantage. So yeah, it's pretty damn important that you keep a steady supply of monsters coming in and steady supply of cards, and Biblisp helps with that. That's why we're running 3 copies of it, because not only can you send it to the graveyard off of Brand of Fusion, but if you can rather discard it as cost for something even generating up to that, then you can typically use your Brand of Fusion for other targets, which means even more value in the long run. So I think 3 copies of Biblisp is absolutely fine. You can, if you wish, cut it down and send it purely off of your Brand of Fusion. Maybe that's the card you want to cut for Mass Change. Up to you. But I'm liking having 3 copies of it. It also does have a secondary effect, where if your opponent controls a monster that has a Predator counter on it, it can special summon itself to the field, or if any monster in the field has a Predator counter, but it'll normally be your opponent's, it can basically just special summon itself back, which is yet another plus in terms of your fusion materials, because you can then use it as material to fuse off into something else. We've got triple Maxi, because Maxi is broken. We've got the Predaplant, whatever the hell that says, Clamea du Sunju. I have no idea. So when this card, basically, it can fusion summon using itself. So this can act as a fusion card, fusing itself and monsters in your hand, as well as monsters on the field that have Predator counters. So if you're able to put Predator counters on your opponent's monster, ideally through the likes of Dragostapelia, then you're going to be able to use those cards as fusion materials. We didn't get to show that off in this replay, in this video, but it's a bit of a niche play. You're not going to do it very often, but it is a pretty neat play. I think its ability to act as a 1-card, or well, 1.5 card fusion, I suppose, is somewhat valuable, but it's not valuable to the point of maybe overloading on it, so you can absolutely cut this card if you wish. It is entirely up to you. Orphoscopia, though, this card is sort of the glue that holds Predaplants together. It works directly alongside Darlington and Cobra in order to... These 2 cards are what actually makes Predaplant viable as an engine. So Orphoscorpio, you can discard a monster whenever this is summoned to special summon a Predaplant monster directly from the deck specifically, not the hand, not the graveyard, from the deck. And the monster you're going to special summon off of that effect is the Darlington Cobra. Darlingtonia Cobra, yeah, whatever. If this card's summoned, special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, specifically, special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, which means it's essentially only usable alongside Orphoscorpio. You get to add any polymerization or fusion spell card directly from the deck to the hand. It's not restricted to normal spells, it's not restricted to anything else, meaning this card can search for your branded fusion, it can search for your fusion destiny, and it can search for super polymerization, which is absolutely insane, which is why we're playing it. So Darlington and Cobra and the Orphoscorpio is incredible, especially considering that you will be able to generate access to these cards very easily. Not nearly as easily as you could once upon a time when we had instant fusion, but it's still not that tough considering you still have Biblisp. That's why we're running 3 copies of this. We really want to get access to our Orphoscorpio plays and make sure we have enough discard fodder for it. We got triple Ash Blossom because fuck Maxi. We've got Denier and Malicious as our Destiny Hero Fusion Destiny targets. Both can recur themselves from the graveyard. These 2 in particular are very important for this deck because they act not only as fusion material but also as mass change targets. So you absolutely must be playing these 2. It just makes your deck infinitely more consistent. 1 copy of Shadow Mist, purely here to be special summoned from the deck off of a Hero Lives. It can sometimes also be a decent Foolish Burial target, but typically it's going to be summoned from the deck off of a Hero Lives entirely. It basically just, it's a way for searching for these, because if this card, there's 2 effects. If this card is special summoned, you get to search your deck for any mass change card. If it is sent to the graveyard, you can search your deck for a hero. Now, you're not playing any heroes you really want to be searching, which you can fix by playing Honest Neos. So this is a strategy that Masked Hero in the description was playing. Being able to search for Honest Neos means that the Dark Law that you summon is going to be even more protected than normal. So this, honestly, isn't even a bad play. I think that's a pretty decent play. We weren't playing it, but it's definitely something to consider. So basically, this guy searches for your mass change cards, which is vital, of course, for the strategy. We've got Keeper of Dragon Magic, which probably isn't a card a lot of you are familiar with. This card, though, can on-summon, discard a card to grab any Polymerization or Fusion normal spell card from your deck and add it to your hand. So this guy can search for Branded and Fusion Destiny, which makes him an incredibly valuable normal summon. This guy's mainly the reason as to why we're not playing Branded Opening, but what you could do if you really wanted to. We didn't face any consistency issues with this deck, but you could absolutely run 2 copies of Branded Opening, just to make the deck a little bit more consistent for grabbing Branded Fusion, which means you can use your Keeper of Dragon Magic more exclusively for Fusion Destiny. Just an option, I'm just throwing it out there. In fact, I probably would recommend playing it that way, because more card advantage, more protection, having Branded Opening in Graveyard will help keep your Dark Law even more safe. So I probably would actually recommend playing these 2 cards in. I just didn't really want to go to 44. 44 is fine. Anywhere between 42 and 44 I think is absolutely fine. I really try not to go above 44. That's sort of where I draw my line. But it is entirely up to you guys. You can cut it if you want, play it if you want, it's up to you. 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz for his name. Again, if you're a mad lad, you could cut it down to 1 if you really wanted to, but I play it at 2 for safety, because I'm a little bitch. Staceylar Remeron. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to send another plant monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, which is useful in a myriad of ways, although almost exclusively you'll be using it to send this Predaplant fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard so that you can use it as fusion material for your Mirror Jade, while keeping your Lubellion and Albion on the field as fusion material themselves later on down the line. So yeah, a single copy of Remeron. You saw the combos in the gameplay, you know how this card works. Aliber, on summon, searches for Branded Fusion. Malicious, of course, can banish 1 from the grave to summon another from the deck, that's why it's so important. And then Denier, I didn't talk about this card earlier. Denier can special summon itself from the graveyard if you control or have in your grave another Destiny hero, and should it do so, you can target one of your Destiny heroes that's either in your graveyard or graveyard deck or banish pile and put it on top of the deck. So the idea is you want to banish Mali from grave to summon another Mali from deck, then you special summon Denier from grave, place your banished Malicious back on top of the deck, and then once these 2 go back to the graveyard, you can use the effect of your Malicious yet again to summon the Malicious that you just put back on top of your deck. So it's basically just a very, very quick way of special summoning 3 extra monsters to your field, which is incredible in a deck that relies very heavily upon having a lot of fusion material, especially fusion material on the field. Predaplant Bullfrogia, basically just in the Pendulum Zone. This card is a once per turn polymerization, which is pretty damn good. Foolish Burial, of course, primarily here to pitch your Shadow Mist or your Bioblip. It can also, however, work alongside your Malicious, should you need that. I don't believe it triggers Remeron, but it might. It does actually trigger Remeron, so you could trigger this card if you really wanted to. You could send Remeron, then Remeron pops her effect to either send a fusion monster or send Bioblip. Would I recommend doing that ever? No, but you can. So there you go. You know that now. We've got a hero lives, pay half your life points to special summon a level 4 lower elemental hero monster from your deck. That is exclusively elemental hero Shadow Mist and no other purpose. You can play Stratos, you can play Liquid Soldier, you can do all of these other cards that in this strategy are going to make your deck objectively worse, but bear in mind your deck is going to be objectively worse. I feel like you would be really you'd be hedging your bets way too much if you were to play other heroes. I think Shadow Mist is the only one that generates significant value for this deck, and if you were to try corrupting your deck or diluting down its effectiveness and consistency by adding in all of these other cards that in any other circumstances are bricks, you're just shooting yourself in the foot in the long run, because you not only want to win games, you want to win games consistently, and that's the key. We got Fusion Destiny. Fusion Destiny, of course, bringing out your Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer or your Destiny Hero Dangerous, depending on the circumstances. But typically your Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, while pitching your Malicious and Denier to the graveyard, giving you a ton of Super Poly material as well as your mass change targets should you need them. Fusion Destiny, one of the most powerful spell cards in the game. You cannot convince me otherwise. This card is incredible. Very, very close to that, if not like right up beside it, is Branded Fusion, of course. Being able to go through using your deck as fusion materials, similarly bringing out your branded fusion cards. Very, very similar in nature to Fusion Destiny. You're typically going to use this combo to bring out Lubellion, Albion, and Mirror Jade all onto your board at once. It is pretty incredible. You're going to have all three on there, and typically from there you're going to use them as fusion materials, and we're going to discuss why that's so useful in just a moment. We've got Super Polymerization, of course. You can run this at 3 if you really want to. This card is incredible. It's searchable in this deck, which is crazy. That's a crazy thing to say, but it is searchable. So we only play 2 of it. Really good card, not only for completely wiping out an opponent's board, but also for generating lethal plays. Quite often you'll find yourself being able to go for lethal because of this card, fusing away either your opponent's monsters or even just some of your own in the battle phase as a quick play fusion. So Super Polymerization has a myriad of different uses. Mass Change and Mass Change 2 are both here to be searched off of Shadow Mist and to summon out your masked hero Darklaw, which is the entire point of playing the hero engine. Mass Change, of course, will tag out a hero monster for a masked hero with the same attributes, so you're going to tag out any of your dark heroes to bring out your Darklaw. Mass Change 2 is a little bit different. First of all, it's got a discard cost, which is less than ideal, but it's fine. You target a monster you control that has a level, then special summon a masked hero monster with the same attribute but a higher level from the deck. So this card subverts the need for a hero monster as material. However, the monster that you target must be a lower level than the masked hero you're trying to summon, meaning you cannot use Malicious as material for this, you cannot use your Albion as material, but you can use any of your other dark monsters. You can use your Predaplants, you can use your Keeper, you can use your Alibur, you can use Albaz, you can use virtually anything else. So very, very versatile. Being able to search for both options off of Shadow Mist gives you a ton of versatility. So definitely, I would recommend playing more of this one, because even if you just hard draw this one, it is almost guaranteed to be useful. Whereas hard drawing Mass Change is useful most of the time, but sometimes it isn't. Bear that in mind. But either way, both are phenomenal cards. Called by the Grave because fuck Maxi. And lastly, Branded Opening, which we just literally talked about adding there now. I wasn't playing it, but I would recommend playing it. Discard a card, special summon the Alibur directly from the deck. Alibur gets searching for your Branded Fusion. It can also banish itself from the graveyard to protect one of your fusion monsters from being destroyed. Pretty solid. Main deck is pretty decent. Like I said, there's still some things that could be argued upon. We got pretty lucky in our gameplay in our early testing. I dare say as we continue to test, there are certain things we're going to change. Getting into the extra deck though, and this is the part I probably should have spent a little bit more time on, because there are definitely some things in here that in hindsight I would like to change. Number one, with our reduced ability to fusion summon into this guy quite as effectively as we used to be able to, I feel like being able to have just one copy and recycle it effectively off of Lubellion is more than enough. I feel like you don't need more than one of this. You used to play more than one of this when we had Instant Fusion, but I think now that Instant Fusion is gone, you definitely don't need anything more than this, because you send this one, you banish it, and then you shuffle it back. So it will be in your extra deck. So one of that is fine. Double Darklaw, I think Double Darklaw is mandatory. I feel like you need at least 2 of this card, just to make sure they can't just blow up one and be done with it. Because yeah, that's typically what it'll do. You do dedicate quite a few cards in your deck to summoning this, so if you were to only possess one and it were to get destroyed, well, there's a solid chunk of your deck now that doesn't really do anything. So I feel like having a second one makes your little arsenal of Mass Change, a Mass Change engine, generate significantly more gas in a longer duel. Destiny Hero Dangerous. This is another one of those cards that was better when we were initially playing with more heroes, but now that we're not really playing with more heroes, the secondary material of this, being able to send Shadow Mist from deck to graveyard, doesn't really generate any advantage, to be perfectly honest. So I would probably cut this as well. We never used it, and it was initially here to help us search for heroes instead of search for Mass Change, but then we sort of shifted the direction of the deck to almost exclusively gunning for Mass Change, so this guy just lost all utility. So I would definitely recommend cutting him. We have Dragstapelia. Really solid fusion monster, definitely one of your boss monsters of this deck. Once per turn, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, put a predator counter on it, and this is more important than it seems. If its level is 2 or higher, it becomes a level 1, immediately shutting down Exceed Summoning, immediately shutting down Synchro Summoning, and even in some circumstances affecting their ability to Link Summon. For example, in the case of sprites, things like that. Of course, Sprite Elf only needs 1 level 2 material, so it's usually not that big of a deal. But it is definitely something worth bearing in mind, that it can shut down Exceed and Synchro decks pretty damn effectively. We've got double copies of Albion. This is another card I was sort of debating on. I feel like having Branded Opening makes the double Albion worth it. If you wanted to include Branded in red and go down that route, you absolutely could, putting in a Guardian Chimera. It's just not something that we had been doing. So, I mean, you could play one of this, or you could play more cards to make the double Albion more valuable. Whatever route you decide to take it is entirely up to you. So we're playing 1 copy of the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, of course, as our Fusion Destiny target. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer has definitely seen better days, but it is still one of the better cards you can summon out in this game for sure, being able to pop cards effectively. And now with Mudora and Keldo going to 1 apiece, the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is going to be able to regain some of the ground it was forced to cede in the face of the Tearlament meta. So Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, not only is it a super powerful card and is only going to get more powerful, the engine that you use to summon it also generates a shitload of value for your deck, putting out a ton of dark monsters, being able to put out a bunch of mass change targets, super poly targets, whatever. So yeah, DPE definitely. I would even argue, in the face of the fact that we're missing a few cards, if you really wanted to, you could play 2 copies of this. If you really wanted to, if you felt spacey, you could. But 1 is fine. Speaking of 1 is fine, we've got Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon. This card, of course, has been, is, and will be one of the most powerful boss monsters in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, at least going forward for a short while. Basically, what makes it so powerful is that the engine to summon it is 1, so consistent, and 2, generates so much damn value, a lot like the Destiny Hero package, except it's even more consistent. So in Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon, basically you can send a fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions the Fallen of Albaz to non-targeting banish any monster on the field. It can do that once every 2 turns. So you can send something like your Albion to the graveyard, which of course generates even more value. I feel like I didn't actually talk about what this card did, which I'll do in a minute. Mirror Jade being able to pitch it to the graveyard to banish something without targeting is one of the most unique methods of destruction. It's one of the big ways of outing something like Avramax without triggering its spin effect, and considering Avramax is quite a popular card and powerful card in the face of the Tearlament meta, having an out to that is pretty damn important. So Mirror Jade is going to be one of your primary outs to the likes of Avramax, as well as the fact that its fusion materials are the Fallen of Albaz plus any fusion, synchro, exceed, or link monster. So if you felt extra spicy, you could even normal summon your Fallen of Albaz and Super Polymerization to fuse it alongside their Avramax to bring this guy out. So there's definitely a lot of really cool things you could do with that, although primarily its engine just generates you a whole bunch of big fusion monsters on board that you can use as materials. It's got a pretty decent banishment effect, and if your opponent were to get rid of it, if it leaves the field thanks to an opponent's card, it will destroy all of your opponent's monsters during the end of that turn. So they also have to play around a graveyard end of turn Raigeki, which is incredible. I should also mention that that last effect there, that plays around cards that are immune to activated effects. So if your opponent's playing a, let's say, a Psychic End Punisher, if they had a Psychic End Punisher, even if they have less life points than you, the Mirror Jade's effect will still wipe out the Psychic End Punisher. Which gives you, again, it's basically just a way to out cards that normally don't have outs. Like, this card just outs unoutable cards, which is pretty cool. It's a decent way to think about it. Lubellion and Albion, I'll talk about these two as a pair. Both of them basically do the same thing. On summon, they both allow you to fusion summon. Albion allows you to fusion summon by banishing monsters from your hand or graveyard or field, whereas Lubellion allows you to fusion summon by shuffling cards from your graveyard, banish pile, field, or hand back into your deck. So they basically just loop into one another. Typically you'll summon Albion first of all, then Albion's effect will summon out Lubellion, and then Lubellion will summon out your Mirror Jade. That's typically how it works in this deck. That's not how it works in every deck, that's just how it works in this deck. So we play 2 copies of this because you will often want to be able to go into this, even as follow-up for like later turns. Being able to shuffle back your Mirror Jade to go into something like a Dragostapelia is always handy, lets you recycle this card. It can also help you recycle your Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. So Lubellion serves a whole myriad of purposes, apart from even your main combo. So being able to go into it multiple times is definitely handy. Alba Lunatus. Alba Lunatus is interesting. This card is here purely for its graveyard effect, which it shares with Albion, although slightly different. Both Albion and Alba Lunatus have an effect where at the end of the turn, should they have been sent to the graveyard, they will both search your deck for a card. Albion the Branded Dragon will search your deck for any branded spell or trap card, whereas Alba Lunatus will search your deck for any fusion or polymerization normal spell card. So Alba Lunatus is essentially going to let you set up something like a Fusion Destiny if you haven't already done so, whereas in the context of this deck, Albion is going to allow you to set up a branded fusion or a branded opening, or if you really felt spicy, you could even go down the route of branded in red. So I'll put this as a placeholder. We weren't playing it, but it's an option I want you to be aware of. We have Predaplant Triflovertum, which is mainly here for his summoning conditions more so than anything else. He's a huge 3k monster that you fuse 3 dark monsters on the field together to summon, meaning he is a phenomenal super poly target. And Vertanaconda, of course everyone knows what Vertanaconda does, allows you to pay 2000 life points to fusion summon using a fusion spell card in your deck, sending it to the graveyard. So it's just quick, basically instant access to fusion monsters. You're very rarely going to use this card because these cards lock you into fusion summoning for the rest of the turn, and you can already grab them so consistently that very rarely would you need Vertanaconda. It's only here in a circumstance where you get hit with like 2 or 3 hand traps and you're completely stuck, right? It's only really for those circumstances that you would use Vertanaconda. So that leaves us with a 13 monster extra deck, and the reason I'm leaving Branded in Red here as a placeholder is one of the better options you could use to fill in the extra deck slots is definitely going to be something like the Guardian Chimera. So if you wanted to play something like this, I would absolutely agree. The only issue is with Branded in Red, you're not often going to have a Despian monster still in your graveyard or a Fallen of Albaz still in your graveyard to use as a target. So Branded in Red does come with its own risks. Guardian Chimera though is still a very decent option. You can still fusion summon it through a bunch of different methods. Can you summon it off of Bullfrog? Yeah, so you can still summon it off of something like Bullfrogia, and its effect is pretty damn powerful. So I would probably play something like the Chimera in one of these missing slots. As for the final card you want to play, that would be up to interpretation. One that jumps to mind is of course the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. It's essentially just a diet version of Triflovertum. It requires 2 monsters instead of 3. Sometimes you want to push for lethal, but you only have 2 monsters available, or maybe your opponent's playing Tearlaments and they only have 2 monsters on their field. Whatever it is, having the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon just grants a little bit more versatility to your super polymerization. So if I were to edit the deck, those are the edits I would make. I would put in Guardian Chimera and the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. I will of course be continuing to play and test this deck as we go along, just to see if my luck holds out when it comes to using it, but thus far I've been pretty impressed. I'm liking it. I hope you like it. If you got this far into the video and you're listening to me continuing to ramble, I do appreciate it. I really thank you for making it to the end. And if you could just do me a wee favor and like the video, I'd appreciate it even more. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.